think I saw a question really quick. So the difference between Microsoft Planner and Project for the Web. So Project for the Web to do has all been rolled up into one, and now it's called Microsoft Planner. And Charlene will show that in a couple slides to explain it a little bit better. All right, so as a company, our core focus is on innovation. So like I said, our team works closely with the Microsoft product team. So any advancements, enhancements that are coming out, products, our team is up to date and make sure that our customers always have the latest technology so that your team can focus on the work that matters and get rid of all those manual processes that you might have. We also these two kind of go hand in hand, customer success and support. So we don't like to just implement something and walk away. We work really closely with your team to make sure you're getting exactly what you need from us and that you can maintain it once where if you don't have support afterwards, you can just maintain it on your own with your team. We do an extensive requirements gathering before we implement anything. So we'll walk with your stakeholders and our development team to make sure that the solution fits your business process exactly. And then after implementation, we have support. We have workshops and hypercare support. We do have an in-house support team, so you're not having to go to a third party to try to fix anything. Our team is always here to help. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to Charlene.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. So with today's webinar, we'll focus on how baselines help you track progress, manage any deviations, and keep projects aligned with your goals. So Planner is going to be Microsoft's newest product offering. Microsoft has invested a lot of research and development work into making the work management experience easier. So in the new Planner, it includes enhanced features to allow you to see all of your work in a single view and allows you to manage tasks, to-dos, and projects within one app. So team members can collaborate, work with assigned tasks, update progress, all in one app without having to switch back and forth. So modern work management is going to span both collaborative and enterprise work management that caters to business users, informal and professional project managers. Microsoft Planner, which was formerly Project for the Web, offers sophisticated project management platform built on Power Platform, and it integrates with tools like Copilot, Power BI, and Power Automate to deliver a comprehensive solution for both task and project management across various roles. And then, like I said, this is going to show a little bit more about specifically what we do with Microsoft Project. We take the capabilities that are already existing and expand on them. So in Project, as it comes, you get some light task management, and we use Power Apps to give you an intake app, timesheets, budgets, things that aren't already existing in Project. And then we connect them with Teams to give you that collaboration back and forth all in one place. And we use Power Automate to automate processes and workflows in the background, and Power BI reports so that all that data ends up really nice and interactive dashboards where you can view all of your data in one place. And that connected platform is going to be our solution, PPM 360. And now I'll pass it over to Stella, who will go over what we're going to cover today and get into the demo.
Hi. So today we will be taking a look at how baselines can be created and utilized in Microsoft Planner, which is Microsoft's newest application for portfolio and project management. So today's demo will be in our pre-configured environment, which we refer to as the PPM solution. So it may look slightly different than your out-of-the-box planner. We'll start at the beginning of the project lifecycle by submitting a request through the intake application. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll begin by submitting a request through the intake application, which is the beginning of the project lifecycle. And then once it's approved, our project will be automatically created in PPM 360 for further management. There we will look at our project schedule and set our baseline. So here we have our intake application where users can submit new requests for approval. So let's go ahead and submit a new request by selecting new from the top. So we'll name our request Baseline EVM Webinar. We'll select IT for our project department. We'll select standard project for our request type, and this request type field is going to determine the schedule template and business process flow used in the project once it's created. The project sponsor field here is going to determine who the project manager will be. So I'm going to go ahead and select myself. And as you can see here, we have some additional fields that can be utilized and completely customized to your needs. Now, what we're looking at here is a Canvas application. So the great thing about this is that I saw a question about Plan 5 license. With the Canvas app, there's not any license restrictions. So basically, the user would just need to be shared the app with them and have about Microsoft 365 license. So users don't need that Plan 5 or project license to access this. We'll go ahead and put our expected benefits in here. We also have a scoring model, which once again can be completely customized. Some questions can be weighted more than others. In this case, our priority score is going to be the sum of the questions selected. And then we also have an area where we can add an attachment. Now that I've completed my request, I'm going to go ahead and submitting it. Now, upon submitting this request, a workflow will be triggered for approval. So as you can see here, I'm at the submitted stage here, and it's been submitted for approval. So approvers will receive an email notification where they can directly approve the request within the email, or they'll also have a link where they can navigate to the request for further review before approving. Once approved, the project will be created in PPM 360. Alternatively, approvers can also select to go to approve requests directly within the app from this PMO tab, where they can edit, assign a project manager, and then approve from here as well. So there's multiple approval options. Let's utilize one of the project links for a request that has already been approved. So as we can see this one down here for EVM demo, it's already gone through our workflow steps of being submitted, approved, and the project's been created. And we can see here that there's a link for it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the link, and it's going to open this new project directly in Planner, previously named Project for the Web. So as we can see here, I'm directly in my project section. If I wanted to, I could navigate to my home dashboard here, which is what you see when you initially navigate to PPM 360. And then we would navigate to our plans area here. I would see my active projects, and I would see the EVM one here when I search for it. So now that I'm in my project, here on the summary tab, we have some general information and details about the project. In our project charter, we also have some fields for general information regarding the project charter. Moving to our tasks tab, we can see our project schedule starting point. This may look familiar to your planner view of your schedule. And I can even pop out the schedule in a bigger window by selecting Open in Project from the toolbar at the top here. Now, any changes I make to my project in this screen will also be reflected in PPM 360 as well. So as we can see here, I'm going to go ahead and make some modifications to my schedule. And then after we modify the schedule, we'll set our baseline and take a look at the Baselines tab. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse my main tasks here. Add a top line to semi duration. I'm going to out indent these here, and we're going to see that's going to give me the total duration for all tasks in this project. So now we can see the total duration of the project is 84 days. And now I'm going to expand my summary tasks here. Now we can see the default columns that our view gave us here for the grid are the name, task name here, the quick look column, assigned to column, duration, start, finish, and depends on. And it started on the date that this project was created, which is today. So we can start by adding some additional columns that can be useful, such as effort, effort completed, effort remaining, and percent complete. We can drag percent complete over here, and we can see our dependencies here as well. So as we can see here, almost every single task relies on another one. It has a dependency, as you can see here. Now, if we take a look at our quick look column here, we can see some notes attached. That means that the schedule template already has some notes for each task. If we click on this, we can see a window that pops out here, and I can view the note, which says define the primary goals and objectives for the project. Another thing that we can utilize the quick look column for and task details in general is to add checklist items. So for example, if I add a couple of checklist items here, I can see that in my quick look column, it's going to show me that I have 3 checklist items. And as I complete them, it'll show me how many have been completed as well. Additionally, there's an area here where I can add an attachment. And once the attachment finishes uploading, we'll see here that an attachment will also be added in this quick look column. So for those of you who use task details regularly, this is a very useful column. Additionally, if you don't have the quick look column, you can still open that window by simply hovering over a task and selecting on the eye, open details here, which will pop up in that window as well. This simply provides some high-level information about the task details for the task. Now we have these Microsoft columns that come with the schedule when it's created, as you can see here. But we can also have the option, as you can see here, to create a new custom column if I don't have one that counts in my schedule. I can create a text, date, number, yes or no, or choice field. Let's go ahead and create a choice field. And we can see here, we can even go as far as to apply colors to each choice. So after I create this field here, we'll see that it's added here. And now for each task, I can apply this. So for example, I can assign this one to 1, this one to 2, and this one to 3. Now, if I decide I don't want this custom field anymore, I can always come in here, edit, and delete the field entirely. Another thing I can do from this window here is assign resources to tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and assign myself to this task. And I'm also going to go ahead and assign, for example, Megan. Now, when I assign Megan to this task, it's going to add me if I want. It's going to ask me if I want to add her to And when you assign a resource to a task, it's going to ask you if you want to add them to the project, the group project, or if you want to just simply assign them to a task. So in my case here, as you can see here, it says, do you want me to add them to just the schedule or also add them to the group here, meaning that they would have access to the team's files. So I'm going to go ahead, assign, and add Megan. So now we can see that Megan's been added to the group here. Alternatively, I can simply come in here and add people to have access to the project and see the schedule without actually assigning them a task in the schedule as well. As I assign resources to tasks, we're going to see that they'll show up in my resources area on my other tab, along with their task information.
Hey, Stella,
Yes.
we have a question in the chat. Jeanette asked, can you assign multiple resources to a task?
Yes, absolutely. You can assign multiple resources to a task. So if I wanted to assign multiple here, I could also assign myself to this task as well. And as we're going to see here, it kept it at 1 day, but we're going to see here for 1 day, typically it's an 8-hour task. When I assign another person to a task, it's going to take their work into account and increase this to 16 hours. So if I were to go ahead and assign Megan as well, we're going to see that's going to increase to 24. So if it's a 1-day task, you get 8 hours per each person that you add. Now, if you want better management of the amount of hours each person is working on, there's a great view here that we have called the assignments view. For those of you familiar with Microsoft Project, this is going to be very similar to your resource usage view. So we can see here, if I group by task, I can see on this task here, I have 3 resources assigned. And it's evenly broken out, these resources, as you can see here, by the 27th to 28th. But for example, if I'm going to be doing more work than the others, or Megan's going to be doing majority of the work, I can actually change this. So I can assign 8 hours to Megan, and we can see that the increase of the whole task will increase. 8 here. I can say 0 on this date, 8 on this date, and we can see that the total effort hours are changing as well. So this allows for more granular control of the tasks that are assigned to multiple resources. Now, back on our grid view here, I'm going to go ahead and increase the duration of this task to 6 days. And we can see that my finish date has also updated to the 4th here. I'm going to go ahead and update this one to 2 days. So far with the schedule, we have looked at our schedule, modified our schedule. We've looked at the quick look column, changed some durations, added some columns here, and created a custom choice field as well. Now that we finished modifying our schedule, we're ready to set our baseline. Now, what is a baseline? So a baseline refers to a snapshot of the project schedule that is captured at a particular moment in time. It is an essential tool for measuring project performance and making informed decisions regarding the progress of a project. So in other words, a baseline is a reference point against which actual performance can be compared. Now let's go ahead and use the current out-of-the-box feature from Planner to set our baseline. As you can see here, you can currently capture the baseline start and finish. So when we select Create Baseline, it's going to capture the current start date, which is 8/22, and the finish date, so the last task here. It's going to tell me that my baseline duration is 90.5 days, and my baseline effort is currently 974 hours, as we can see here. When this changes, you'll see this window will display a notification that you're behind schedule and by how many days. So let's go ahead and change the finish date of our schedule and see how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and move this back. Let's go ahead and make our schedule late by about a week. Now that we've done that, we can check on our baseline and see that our project is behind schedule by 5 days. Now, currently, this capability allows for setting one baseline, but if I wanted to delete this baseline, I could delete the baseline here and create a new one. Now, fortunately, Microsoft Planner is working on adding advanced baseline features, which we can see by additions of tables in the backend in Dataverse to Microsoft's Accelerator. Once released, you'll be able to capture baselines for various aspects for each task, such as the start, finish dates, duration, percent complete, effort remaining, and effort completed. For now, Marquee 360 has a custom solution for setting baselines for tasks. So let's navigate to our baseline EVM tab here. Now, EVM stands for Earned Value Management. EVM is a project management methodology that combines cost, schedule, and technical accomplishments to measure project performance and progress. EVM allows PMs to compare a project's actual progress to its forecast, which can help them predict the project's outcome and identify potential issues early on. EVM can be used on a variety of projects, regardless of the size or type. Today, we are going to evaluate the schedule portion without factoring in cost. So you can see here a table with task information. As you can see here in these 2 baseline columns, the start and finish date for tasks will be captured once we set our baseline here. Some of these other columns are pulling in actuals, such as parent task, task name, start, finish, and percent complete. And this can be customized to pull in more actuals as well, such as duration is also pulling in actuals. We also have some custom calculated columns, which have pre-configured formulas to capture aspects like WFEJ, which stands for weight factor expert judgment. And in one of our other columns, here we have SV weighted factor, which stands for schedule variance. These custom baseline columns can help measure the schedule progress based on these variables and also take costs and factors into account as well. Now let's go ahead and set our baseline to populate these baseline columns. In our case, we're going to utilize this form here at the top that we have that says this trigger field that says create baseline. So I'm going to go ahead and trigger the workflow by selecting yes, that I want to set my baseline. Now, as the workflow is working to populate, I'm going to go ahead and note that I created my baseline this date. At the time that I created my baseline, the start date was 8/22. And the baseline finish is 1/2/2025. Now, as we can see here, as the workflow is working in the background, my baseline start and finish columns are populating here. And as I press refresh, I can see that they'll continue to populate for these two columns. Now, as discussed, this is capturing the project schedule at this point in time. Now let's talk about our status date field here. So our status date field is going to function to show us at a specific point in time. For example, if I were to change the status date to 8/30, for example, or 8/29, it would say in this plan percent complete column that by that point, these tasks should have already been finished since they have a finish date before 8/28. So this plan percent complete and the actual percent complete, if the task wasn't finished, work together in formulas for these other custom columns to calculate things like schedule variance and track potential issues if the schedule is running behind. As you can see, as I mentioned before, we do have these additional custom columns that are utilized to track progress schedule. In our case, weighted factor expert judgment, and we also have weighted factor main categories. Together, we'll see that these two multiplied are going to give us the weighted factor final. Now, the way that these fields specifically function are for this specific situation, but all business processes are different. So you may not need to track these aspects of your baseline schedule. In this case, these variables play into the calculation of other custom columns. As we can see here, we have a column for plan percent complete, which ties into our status date field here. So let's go ahead and set our status date for a few days from now that our baseline has been fully populated. So when I set the status date, I'm going to go ahead and set it for 8/30. Now, when I save my project, we can see that here that the plan percent complete will be updating. And while we do that, let's go back to our task here and go ahead and mark some of these complete and mark this one as partially complete. Mark this one as maybe 25% complete. This one as 40. Now, as we do this, we can see that it's updating the effort completed too. So as you can see here, this was a 8-hour task. I put 50%, it updated this to 4, and so on for these columns. Now let's go ahead and fill out our weight factors for our tasks. So WF in this case determines the task's overall weight within that area of the schedule, specifically within the parent task area. So let's go ahead and group by parent task. So the purpose of this field is to determine the weighted factor that each of these tasks has to the overall parent task. So ideally, these should all equal 100, and then whatever values assigned to this parent task would be assigned to each of these in the WF main categories. So we'll go ahead and do 50 here, 25, 25, and we'll give each of these 15 to the overall schedule. We'll populate some of these down here as well. Normally, these wouldn't all be 25. And we'll give these 20. I'm actually going to change this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and change my grouping, organize by oldest to newest, and update the weight factors for these as well. And we can see here after we put these numbers that these two columns multiplied give us our WF final. And we can see here that since we set our status date to 8:30, we can see here that leading up in our schedule, everything to 8:30 has now a plan percent complete of 100. Now, columns like schedule variance, weighted factor are going to take the weighted factor final, so the weighted factor of the overall task into account, along with actual percent complete and plan percent complete. So actual complete weighted factor here. We can see the schedule variance is behind schedule here. There's only 25% of this task has been completed when the plan percent complete by this time, 8:26, should have been 100 here. If we scroll over, we can see some other factors here as well, such as the plan complete weighted factor, so how this contributes to the overall performance of the schedule. And we can also take a look at plan percent complete weighted factor as well. We can see for the schedule variance weighted factor that it is taking the actual percent complete weighted factor and subtracting it by the plan percent complete to give our schedule variance. Actual complete weighted factor is calculated by taking the percent complete, multiplying it by the weighted factor final, and then dividing it by 100. Another thing to note is this customization can account for setting various baselines. This customization would include adding an additional field up here to determine the baseline number being set. And then you could view your different baseline sets by changing the view here. Now, in this instance for the specific customer, when they have these fields filled in, these custom fields, and I set a new baseline, these field values will carry over from one baseline to the next, but the baseline fields will be empty until I actually set that baseline. But this way it gives them a starting point and then they can modify as needed and they won't have to fill it in each time. Additionally, we can change the way we view the baseline table by grouping category. So for example, earlier we showed the parent task. I can also group by weighted factor here. I can group by start date. I can also group by project task, percent complete, and essentially any of the columns that I have. So now let's take a look at the task that I have that's a 6-day duration. So as we can see here, this task is a 6-day duration. As we can see here, this task is a 6-day duration, and I set my status date to 8:30. This task runs from 8:29 to 9:05 here. So we can see that my status date is 8:30, so only 14.29% of this should have been completed so far. So we can see here that my schedule variance for this is less negative than what my other ones are for tasks that should have already been completed by now. So fortunately, we can also utilize this read-only grid, which is actually new to the Power Platform for Planner, to show the sum, maximum, minimum, or average values of any of these columns at the bottom. So let's take a look at that. So for example, if I wanted to see the weighted factor final, actually the first thing we need to do is change this to a read-only grid. And now we can see here, I can come here, say, show me my total. I can say the average, maximum, minimum, or sum. I'm going to go ahead and select sum. I'm going to add that for this here as well. So show me the sum. For this one, I'll say, go ahead and show me the average. For duration, I want to know what's the maximum duration I have on a given task. And now we can scroll down to the very bottom here. And we can see where these have been added. So I know the sum of this one, the sum, average, maximum, and these can be applied for any of these. Of course, it makes the most sense for these calculated fields that are numerical rather than dates. Now this can be exported as well. We can export this project tasks to an Excel for further management and export the current values that you're showing here. Anyone have any questions?
Stella, quick question. What happens if you add a task after you set the baseline?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. So I'm going to change back to my editable grid. I'm going to organize this from oldest to newest. I'm going to come back to my tasks here, and I'm going to add a new task here at the top. And I'm going to call it new task so you can see it on the schedule. So since this wasn't here when the baseline was set, what it's going to do is it's going to add it because it's going to add it to this table here, but the baseline is going to be empty for it. So as we can see here, the workflow is already working. It's saying untitled task. If I refresh again, we'll see that it's going to be, the name is going to come in as a new task. And we're going to see that all of these are empty here. So the baseline start and finish are empty, and start and finish date are even empty because I haven't assigned an actual start and finish date for this. So once I assign start and finish date here, that will come in as well, but the baselines will remain empty since the baselines weren't there to begin with. So as you can see here, I have the start and finish date, but the baseline fields remain empty since that field wasn't there. Now, when I run my second baseline, then that baseline start and finish will copy over these current ones for baseline 2. But since this wasn't present when I set my baseline 1, it will not show up. This is another way to identify changes in the schedule by identifying tasks that weren't there before. So for example, I could organize this from oldest to newest, and I can see any new tasks were added here because they're blank. So I see a question here, is there a place to add real hours versus expected hours? So, yes. So the real hours here would be effort completed, here, and then expected hours would be captured in our baseline as well. So this baseline, as I said before, right now, the actuals that we're pulling in here are start and finish and the baseline start and finish, but this can be customized to also pull in baseline effort and then actual effort. So you'd have those two on a view. And you can even create multiple baselines view after you set it to say, for example, I want a cost baseline view that shows me cost related fields and then effort related baseline that shows me more of the effort completed, effort remaining. And you can even go into what resources were assigned at a specific point in time as well, and if that changed as well. So I know we've covered a lot of information today, a lot of high level information. Does anyone have any questions about the customization capabilities or how this works in Planner? Okay, well, so since we have time, I'm going to go ahead and just show that we actually don't have a custom report for EVM at this time, but I can show you an example of one of the reports we do have that can be customized for this. So as you can see here, one of the reports that we have is a task overview report here. So it shows our task, the project name, start and finish, progress, effort, completed, effort remaining. So what we could do is we actually could have a filter here that says baseline, and then it could compare the baseline one. It would show me what that was for a specific project, and it can be completely modified to remove all of these visuals and show you baseline tasks. Yes, I believe this recording will be available to watch again. I believe a link will be sent out after the webinar for it.
Yes, Michelle, Megan will send that over to you.
So since we have a little bit more time, one of the other advantages of PPM 360 is the ability to track risks, issues, and changes. So as you can see here, we have some other tabs that I didn't touch on, such as financials. So for a current customer that we're deploying this for, what's great is their baseline fields here. They actually have two columns all the way to the right that play into factor financial fields. So those are going to be for them plan percent complete weighted factor and actual complete weighted factor and schedule variance. So those play into formulas for their financials fields here where they can see based on the schedule, those field values will change. So how the cost may be impacted based on schedule variance, how far behind they are, and how the potential costs of the schedule being behind will affect the overall project and the benefits and the ROI. It also can take forecast into account by forecasting, taking schedule into account and cost. So you can have your cost forecast and your schedule forecast, and those two can affect each other as well. So we can also create very custom financial columns here that take those into account in their formula. In our resources tab here, we can see that those resources that I added to the tasks are summarized here. And we can see that I can see the resource, the role. So for Megan, it added her default role, which is project director engineer. But let's say for Megan, I want her to play a different role on this project. I can go ahead and edit her role. Come in here, change the role out, either create a new one or use an existing one, and I make her civil engineer on this project. Now we can see from the tasks, it's summing that she has 104 hours assigned to her, with the first task starting on 8/26 and the last one ending on September 5th. And as she completes hours, we can see the effort completed and effort remaining. This view can also be completely customized. For example, we have another view for team members where I can come in here and make some changes for each of my resources. So as I also can add resources directly to this table here by looking for a resource, assigning a role, start, and finish date. Now it's going to add her to my table, but she's not assigned to tasks yet. So there's not actually any tasks here for her quite yet. It is going to add her to my resource engagements table here. And as you can see, she's not assigned any tasks, but I can still say that I plan to have her engaged in this project for about 50% of FTE full-time equivalent. So roughly 80 hours a month, February, and so on. We have an area here that we can log risks for a project, and this is completely customizable as well. So if I want to log a new risk, let's say I've noticed that my schedule, based on my baselines, my schedule is behind track significantly and it's going to affect the cost. I can say that schedule delay. I can say this is an active risk. I can assign it to myself. From category, I would select schedule or budget, depending on if it's already affected my budget or not. Could be one or the other. We also can make this a multi-select field as well. And the categories obviously are completely customizable to your categories. I can say this needs to be due. So all the tasks that are late need to be finished by next week. I can say the probability that this risk will occur is about 75%. And impact is on 1 to 5. So I'll say impact would be about 7 overall. Cost exposure, I can say I can use my financial baseline fields to give me an actual cost based on the schedule delay. When I save here, I'm going to see that probability percentage. So 0.75 times 7 is going to give me my exposure. And then my cost exposure is also calculated based on these fields as well. I can describe this and say schedule, performance, progress, officially affecting project cost, and say deadline has been set to complete late tasks to prevent financial consequences. Then I can also put a contingency plan in here. At the bottom, we have an area for system information where I can see when this was created on and was modified on, who it was modified by last. I can share this risk by emailing a link directly to this risk, which will bring it directly in here, copying a link that I can send someone to manage this risk if I just assign it to someone. And I can also manage access here by who has access to this risk. So I can, for example, if someone who wasn't already on the project, I could type their name in here. So for example, Neil, I can select him here. And when I select his name, I'm going to be able to decide what type of permissions he has. And then I can share this with him. Issues is a similar concept too. So we have an issues table here. And if I want to create a new issue, I can do so by entering these fields. Say this is active, choose my issue categories. We'll say this is a budget requester. I can say my supervisor or Aaron. I can assign it to someone else. I can say this is a critical priority and it's due next week. I can describe this critical issue some more, and I can also give details on a resolution for this issue. Once again, more information can be added here as these fields are completely customizable, as well as the values you're seeing. So is there a feature to allow resource time entry against a task? Yes. So do you mean the resource themselves entering the time?
Yep, I'm coming off mute. Yes, the resource themselves. Let's say we scheduled, 20 hours. That was in the baseline, but when the task was complete, let's just say it was like 30, right? So you'd be able to see that difference and know that, yeah, now your cost overrun, but you're looking at the actual spend against that task.
Yes. So what's great is that within Planner, there is a default notification. So every time I assign someone a task, for example, Charlene, she can receive an email notification saying you've been assigned to a task with the link directly to this task. And all she needs is a Microsoft 365 license to come in here and update her % complete. Now with the new Planner integration, what's really great about that is directly in Planner, she'll have an area where she'll see the tasks that are assigned to her. So my tasks assigned to me. So my tasks here. And this will show her all the tasks across all of her projects. For example, this would be the project that she's assigned to. This is the task name. And directly from here, she can change this to in progress, which on your schedule will change it to 50%, or she can change it to completed. And then that will read that back to your schedule. Alternatively, within here directly, we have an area that we've created here at Marquee 360 for our solution called My Tasks. And what's great about this view is it shows the active viewer all the tasks that they are assigned across all projects. And this is always for the active user. Now, what we can do is you can use the filters. Let's say, for example, I want to know all the tasks assigned to all projects for, let's say, Mia. I can simply just change the name to active viewer to Mia. And if she's on my team and I want to see all the tasks she's assigned to, I can see here now it's showing all of Mia's tasks. I can even go as far as to save this view here. So save as new view, Mia tasks, save. And now I have a custom view here. So I have my views, and then I also have my tasks view, and then I also have Mia's tasks. So from my tasks here, I can see if I want to update % complete on this project. I can go to the project, go to the task, and update it. Did that answer your question, William?
I think so. I think the other part I was getting at is, let's just say over 2 weeks a resource is assigned, and I'm going to go off the norm here. 10 hours for the 2 weeks, so it'd be 5 hours a week. They get to logging 5 hours or marking that 50% complete after the first week, which would be right. Then they realize on Monday it's going to take an additional 5 hours. They can get that task done, but it's longer than the 10 hours we originally thought. And I was trying to figure out how we compare, here's what the baseline was, and the resource actually going in and saying, and logging an additional 5 hours. Still ending on the day they were supposed to, but now there's cost overrun.
I see. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. So as I said here, this can be customized. So right now we're tracking literally just baseline, start, and finish. But with Microsoft's Dataverse tables, which we can already see in the solution that they're building in the background, it just hasn't been released on the front end yet. You're going to be able to capture, right now, the way they have it set up, you'll be able to capture start, finish, effort completed, effort remaining, and progress, % complete, and duration. So those would simply just need to be added to this table here. So you can see what planned. So I would set my baseline here, right? For example, and for this task here, I can see that I would just show, include in this view, effort. And when I set my baseline, it would say baseline effort. And then I can look at my actual one. So I would add my actual effort here. So the same way I have this baseline start and this baseline start for comparison, I could simply add baseline effort, actual effort.
Got it.
Does that make sense? So this view is completely customizable, so you can add as much as you want. In this case here, this was a mock-up for a customer that needed more calculated fields here. But if it was me personally, the way I run my schedules, these are very useful to have, but I would definitely want to, add effort completed, because resources do tend to go over hours and you want some kind of alert for that. We could even go as far to with using some coding for this to apply a, highlighted red cell anywhere where it did go over, or, which would act essentially as like a variance. So planned effort versus actual effort. And then it would highlight red or send a notification for anyone that did go over.
Makes sense. And is there any, sorry, it's just led me to another question here.
No, please.
For a task here, and I'm just making up one, I guess I'm looking at like develop project chart. This is probably a bad one. But if someone's working, so we have the project plan, but if someone's working out of the specific JIRA tickets that have been raised, bringing those over, is there logging time to bring those back over into the project to say, okay, so we allotted 10 hours for this specific task item, but these JIRA tickets are the equivalent of 20, and they're related to that item. And now we want to make sure that's included as they're logging their time and they're closing out those tickets. Is there any sort of integration between the two?
Yeah, we do JIRA integration. So what we like to say is, as long as it has an API, we can integrate with it. That varies from case to case, but we have done JIRA integrations. The way their query reads, it actually would be pretty easy to pull that in. So what I would recommend for that is not reading it necessarily to the tasks table here, but having this baseline tracking. So there would be a workflow or integration that would bring in, let's say, task name. I'm guessing on the Jira side, it would be the same task name here. And then it would bring in, once that task is completed, it would run on a flow that would show the actual completed. And then you would obviously measure initial effort here as well. So then it would still be able to give you that notification of a task plan for 5 hours actually was logged for 20. And just to understand the way that your Jira works, it lets users, like similar to Microsoft Project, it lets users log over the initial effort without approval.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we have an approval flow, right? We can toggle that, but yeah, in some cases that happens, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this would be a good way to check that effort variance, essentially, how much time was actual versus, and then you can go as far as to create a custom report for that, and you could track by resource across all projects. So you can have some kind of variance or some kind of calculation that shows this resource was 100% tracked across all projects. Their effort was 100, they logged 100, or they logged 90, so they actually finished their tasks with even less time, versus this resource across all projects had 100 hours and ended up logging 200. Obviously, they needed more across all tasks, and obviously we could also play in cost into that based on the resource's hourly rate and how many additional hours there were, how that cost is now going to affect the bottom line or the project.
Right. And we need to learn from that, right? The other part is we need to get better at estimating if it's that far off. And those are all the things that I'm just trying to close the gap on. So this is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you and everyone else. It's definitely an area that, the planned hours and the actual hours, when actual hours gets higher than the planned hours, it really starts to affect project cost. And that's why this is so useful, because we can tie these into those financial fields for forecasting. And then we have many reports too. So you're talking about the resource dashboard. We have one here for allocation. So we can also create custom reports. So this one actually has a heat map. So this one's a little better. So what they're allocated to here. So this report could be customized to, have a filter or a different view up here that showed actual versus, project demand, what's planned, and then actual. So we can work in a variance here, whether it be using a Power BI query or creating that custom column in Dataverse and then simply pulling it into the Power BI report. Either way, it's completely possible.
Yes, it's great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
There's no other questions. I just wanted to jump in really quick, Stella, and just let everyone know that I did put a survey in the chat. If you could fill that out and let us know if this webinar was helpful for you. I also wanted to mention that this was a pretty in-depth technical webinar. We showed a lot of stuff today, and the amazing thing with Power Platform and Microsoft Planner is that we can do a lot of stuff with it, but we can also pull some of those things back as well. So don't be overwhelmed if you're not there where we showed today yet. If you're just getting started with Planner, trying to figure out the capabilities, figure out licensing, we're also very happy to help with that as well. Our team will be following up with everyone with the recording. So if there's anything you want to go over or share with anybody else on your team, you'll have the ability to do that as well. And just thank you guys so much for joining us.